Quick disclaimer, there was something wrong with my microphone when I recorded this video. Didn't realize it until I was editing. So for this one, it's going to be the camera audio, so I apologize for the background noise. Hope you guys can still enjoy the video. It'll be fixed for the next one, y'all. Peace.
What's good, y'all? Welcome back to Rick Knows Hoops. I'm your host, Tyreek. Be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you are new. This is a place where we talk all about NBA basketball, so if you love hoops, this is the place for you. And today's focus in this video will be what's next for the Utah Jazz. This is a part of the What's Next series where we talk about what's coming up for some of your favorite NBA teams. And today we're going to talk about the Jazz, a team that had the best record in the league last season. Got bounced in the second round by a Kawhi-less Clipper team. And now we're going to talk about what's next for them. I think they made some moves this offseason that are being kind of under the radar moves that I think improved their team a lot. But it's all about seeing how it plays out on the court for them. And this is a team that should have some high expectations going into this season. Hopefully a healthy season, because they were derailed by some injuries in the postseason. Donovan Mitchell missed some time in the postseason. He was hobbled pretty much the entirety of the postseason. Mike Conley missed basically the entire Clipper series except for, I think, Game 6. And, just some injuries to some guys that, could have completely changed the way that their season turned out. So let's go ahead and get into what the Jazz did this offseason. And I want to start this with what the Jazz lost in the offseason. I think that they did a good job retaining their guys that were critical to their success last season. The guys that they ended up losing were rotational pieces was Georges Niang, who signed with Philly. He got some rotational minutes. He was an okay piece for them, but not really somebody that really shifted the tide for them. And they also lost Derek Favors, who was the backup center for them pretty much over the last decade, other than one season when he was with the Pelicans. They decided to trade him away to OKC, and to replace him, they brought in Hassan Whiteside, which I think is going to be an interesting addition to this team. How well will he play as a backup? I think can provide some very similar things that Rudy Gobert does. Maybe a little more offensively, gifted in the post, I would say. So I think that's an interesting move. I think it could be a very, high reward type of move, and maybe a low risk, because if it doesn't work out, you can always just go and try and find somebody else to play that backup big role. So I do like that move. I also like the move bringing in Eric Paschall from the Warriors. I think he's somebody that was very underutilized with Golden State, and I think he fits in perfectly with the Utah Jazz. I think he's going to find his role offensively off that bench, and I think he's an okay defender too, and I think he'll be able to come in and play really well for this team in the second unit. And then the Rudy Gay addition, I really love this pickup, getting Rudy Gay. He is a Utah Jazz player. Like he seems like he just fits the Utah Jazz perfectly. And he's somebody that's really remolded his game as he's gotten older, and I think he's become even better with age, just learning, how to buy into his role instead of, he was a borderline all-star in the younger days in his career. Didn't find much success, especially making the playoffs with teams that he was at. Teams seemed to get better when they lost Rudy Gay. That's one thing that's kind of been an unwritten rule in the NBA, that teams get better when Rudy Gay is no longer in their roster. But I think he's turned into a veteran that really plays his role well. I think he's going to fit in perfectly with Utah, man. I really like that, the pickup of Rudy Gay. And then they also re-signed Mike Conley. I forgot to mention that. They re-signed Mike Conley. People weren't very fond of his contract. He did get a lot of money, but it's like, it's either you keep your all-star point guard, by paying him maybe a little more than what he's worth, or you lose him for nothing. And they wouldn't have been able to replace Mike Conley in the way that they would have wanted to, that would have kept them as a team that's trying to contend for a championship. So keeping Mike Conley was big. I think like what I mentioned earlier is that, health was really the issue for this team going down the stretch of the season. They were pretty much the best team all season long, as far as record goes, but they were beating up on some of the other, top contending teams in the NBA. They had a stretch where I think they won like 14 plus games. They went on a nice winning streak early on in the season. And I think, for me personally, that's what made me kind of buy into the Jazz as being a championship team. And especially with the league not being as dominant last year, mainly due to injuries, I thought it was a perfect opportunity for the Jazz to have a championship run. And it just didn't work. It just didn't work out that way. Yeah, a lot of people are going to go back to the playoffs. They're going to look at the Rudy Gobert defensive performance that he put on against the Clippers. When the Clippers downsized, it was tough for Rudy to really find a way to, be effective on the defensive side, because they spaced the floor out, had Terrence Mann in the corner, and that's how Terrence Mann had that big time Game 6 performance. But I also say that's kind of how the Utah Jazz defense is run. They try to funnel everything inside to Rudy Gobert to protect the rim, but when there's nobody down low for him to, be near the painted area, it really takes him out of effect. And then when he does come and help, that's how Terrence Mann and Marcus Morris and Pat Bev were getting wide open 3-point shots in the corners. And that's really what ultimately ended the season for the Jazz. But they still had a golden opportunity, even though they were dealing with injuries themselves. Kawhi Leonard was out the last 2 games of that series. You go home, 2-2 series, you go back to Utah, and Paul George has a classic performance. He has a classic performance, and then you guys are up like 20 points in Game 6 and are unable to close that game out as well. So there were plenty of opportunities for the Utah Jazz to get out of that series, to move on to the Western Conference Finals, and anything could have happened past that point, because you remember Chris Paul missed the first couple games of that series due to COVID. So anything could have happened from that point on. You could have potentially went up 2-0 because you would have had home court advantage also at your disposal, but it didn't happen that way. We all know how the Clippers got out that series, and it looks bad for Utah, even though they dealt with some injuries themselves. Like I mentioned, Donovan Mitchell was not 100%, even though he was still hooping. Mike Conley missing most of that series was big time, but again, they were also 2-0 in that Clippers series. So this season coming up, man, I think this is a year for the Jazz where they should be thinking like we have to make a deep play. We got to get past that second round at least. We have to get past that second round, because I don't think it's talked about enough. Just how this team has yet to get past the second round. When you have 2 guys that are all NBA caliber, 3 All-Stars last season. Bogdanovich is still a very, very good player. Jordan Clarkson won 6th Man of the Year. You have a very, very talented team. You're pretty well coached with Quinn Snyder, very well coached. And you got guys that are entering like their peaks, even though Mike Conley's a little, past 30, but you have guys that are playing their best basketball of their careers. And, now's the time to put it together, man. I mean, I think the West is still tough, but I don't think it's as top heavy this season because guys are dealing with injuries that we've mentioned all off season. Kawhi Leonard, who knows if he'll even play this season. Same thing with Jamal Murray. I mean, you got the Lakers still. You have the Phoenix Suns. And then outside of that, man, I think the Jazz are right up there with those 2 teams. I think they should feel like they're up there with those 2 teams. But it seems like they just haven't been able to put it together over the last couple of seasons. Especially like last year was a golden opportunity for them to, potentially make it all the way to the finals. I really do believe that, and they did not get it done. So I think this season, maybe they're not under the most pressure, but I think they should feel pressure on themselves to make a very good, push towards making a finals run. They should feel like that they can make the NBA Finals this season. If it doesn't happen this season, man, it might not ever happen, because, of course, like we mentioned, there's probably 2 other teams out there that are super competitive that have a real shot at making the finals. But I don't really think outside of the Lakers and the Phoenix Suns that any other team other than the Jazz should really feel confident in making the finals this season, given the health of some all-star caliber players on those rosters, and just a lot of teams out west didn't get that much better. But I think the Jazz, I think the Suns, and I think the Lakers are all 3 teams that got better this offseason, and it should show on the court this regular season. But yeah, I'm excited to see guys like Donovan Mitchell continue to take steps forward. He's always been a big-time playoff performer, but this past regular season, he was having a really, really good year, especially after the All-Star break, when he had already got the All-Star nod. He came out second half of the season, was playing even better. He was playing even better basketball, so I'm excited to see guys like him continue to grow. I'm a big fan of Mike Conley. I'm glad to see him in a competitive situation. I was happy to see him make the All-Star game last season as well. And I'm ready to see guys like Bogdanovich have a fully healthy season, because he's kind of dealt with injuries over the past couple of years. He's somebody that he's like a 20-point per game scorer, and it was hard for him to display that dealing with injuries over the last couple of seasons. So I just want to see this team healthy, because I think when healthy, they are a very, very good team, very competitive team, and they have a legit shot of making at least the conference finals in the Western Conference. As tough as the West is, I think they have a legit chance of doing that. But we'll see once the season starts, man. We're like a month away from seeing NBA basketball, which is kind of crazy to think. It feels like the season just ended, but we're about a month away from seeing some of our favorite teams play again. So be sure to subscribe to the channel, because I'll be dropping videos like this pretty much daily. And once the season comes around, it will be probably every single day recapping games, talking about some players that's been breaking out and stuff. And I got a lot more things before the season starts, like some preseason stuff that I want to get into, like maybe some award predictions and stuff like that. So be sure to tune in, man. Subscribe, leave a like, helps out the channel a lot. And I'll be back next time with the What's Next series. Might be talking about your favorite team.